This is The Clash, where the real world clashes with a true Christian worldview. Join former professional wrestler Chris Whaley, known as the Masked Saint, who is an author, pastor, and teacher that brings his wrestling skills into the squared circle and tackles real-life issues. Along with Jeff Dixon, best-selling author, internationally known teacher, leader, and pastor who is not afraid to tackle the tough issues of the world we live in. Together they form a tag team of wisdom in The Clash.
Hi, welcome to The Clash. My name is Jeff Dixon. I'm joined by my co-host and friend,
Chris Whaley.
and we're going to take a couple of minutes in this episode and talk about taking a Christian worldview and allowing it to clash into the culture that we live in. Now, Chris, we are living in some interesting days. This is our political chaos episode.
Right.
Now, we're recording it, and we're in the midst of what is a pretty hot political season with some history events happening in the world right now.
You know, I think there's a lot of people on both sides, more on one side, that are looking at things going, what are we going to do? And I think there's probably some excitement on the other side, but we definitely are in a time of complete political chaos, and I think we got some interesting things to share with our audience today.
Well, we're going to help unravel the chaos. Boy, that's a lofty goal, isn't it?
I love that.
I think we're destined to be disappointed here. But don't go anywhere. Right after the break, we're going to come back and plow into what is really the news and the political news of the day.
Right.
After this moment. Hi. Thanks for not leaving during the break because, well, I'm obviously trying to get you to buy something. I really am. If you're anything like me, middle of summer, sometimes it gets really hot. We film here in Florida. It's hot all the time. And every once in a while, you'd like to take a little bit of a break. Get a little Christmas spirit going in your life. If so, I have a suggestion for you. I have written a novella based upon the characters that show up in my novels. It's called Then Christmas Happens. It's available in the exclusive paperback edition, the collectible hardback edition, or if you're lazy like I am and you want someone to read to you, you can also get this book on Audible in about an hour and 10, 15 minutes. Hear it, read it, and get a little Christmas magic happening in your life. To get it, you have to go to Amazon, look up my name, Jeff Dixon, and then let Christmas happen in your life. Hi, welcome back. We are looking and talking about political chaos. And in this segment, Chris, I want to take back, we're in the throes, just while we're recording this, we are in the throes of a presidential election.
Right.
We have just been watching as history's unfolded over the past few days, but really in the Biden-Trump clash, if you will, a lot of this started back, it started back in the election cycle 4 years ago, but most recently in the debate that they had. They had a debate on CNN
Right.
where President Trump and Joe Biden kind of went head-to-head, and the world saw that. And from that point on, things started getting a little crazier than they were before, if that is even possible.
You know, immediately after the debate, of course, we all knew how bad it was for Biden. I mean, he was terrible. And Trump just ate him up in that debate. And then, all that's coming down is that Biden should get out. Biden should get out. And it looked like by the end of the week, is that going to happen? And then, no, Biden's strong again. And, well, not strong, but anyway, he was able to cover it up. And then the next week, you don't think he's going to last till the end of this week. And we're at that point now, Jeff, where, we don't know if he's even going to be out when this thing airs.
Yeah, it's a funny climate that we're in because obviously as we're filming a show, it's not a live show, so we're filming a little bit ahead. And down the road for you, we have a couple of specials that we had already recorded,
Right.
Where we kind of took our Christian worldview and looked at Donald Trump as a candidate and Joe Biden as a candidate. And I think in a fair way, gave pros and cons for both as to how a Christian could vote for either one of those guys.
Right.
Well, now all of a sudden we're sitting here and we're kind of wondering today whether Joe Biden will still be the Democratic candidate come a week from now or 2 weeks from now.
Right.
And so everything could kind of shift. So if we seem like we're a little out of sync, that's probably why. We finally have an excuse.
Yeah,
To be out of sync.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I will say, as I think about the debate, and that kind of started this ball rolling forward. There was so many things that you could say about that debate. The one thing I would say, though, is stepping a half step back from it, that I think was shocking for a lot of people, is that Donald Trump was not the Donald Trump that we saw in the previous election cycle.
Right.
Very restrained. He didn't get bombastic. He didn't get explosive. He was very, he was certainly Trumpish,
right.
but very meticulous in his going back and forth. And he allowed Joe Biden to do something that became so damaging for Biden in the debate. He let Biden talk.
That's exactly right. And you know, Jeff, I was a little nervous about the debate, mainly because, you know, Biden wanted it at this time. He's the one that wanted CNN. CNN made the rules that they were going to, you know, they even showed us how stupid we are by showing us how it would work, you know, by cutting off the mic. And I'm watching all this and I'm thinking, man, they're just doing everything they can to make sure that Donald Trump doesn't have a good debate. I mean, did you feel that way a little bit?
Yeah, I thought it was interesting. Yes, I agree. I agree with what you said. I thought it was interesting to me. More interesting to me, though, was the fact that when they're kind of going back and forth on that campaign trail a little bit, and Trump was like saying, "Let's debate," and Biden said, "Okay, let's debate. Let's go after it." And then they put all these rules in place, and without asking for one change.
Right.
No audience.
That's exactly right.
On a quote-unquote an unfriendly network, Trump said, okay.
Yep.
And it was almost fearless to say, okay, I'll play by your rules. I'm that confident coming in. Somebody, and again, I don't know about political handlers and how that works, but at some point, some political handler on the Democratic side should have been absolutely terrified that Trump said, okay, I'm not. Yes, you set the parameters. I can come in. I can step into that.
I think they thought Trump would turn it down. I really do. I think they thought Trump would turn it down. They had no clue that he was going to say yes to everything that they were demanding, and he did say yes. And it came back to bite him.
Yeah, I remember watching it and. And kind of taking a deep breath at some point during the debate when it wasn't a scream fest. I mean, because again, that would have been, of course, they were controlling the mics anyway. But I had a few moments where I kind of felt bad for Joe Biden because he was struggling, and he was struggling to kind of keep up and come up with answers, and the recall wasn't there. Now again. I got it. He's a leader of the free world, so he's got to be on point on his game. But there were some moments that he struggled so much that there's the sympathy, empathy side of me really did kick in. I thought, man, I just feel bad for this guy. And I was surprised by that because again, I tend to look at politics very much as a game, and I just kind of felt bad for him in the game.
Yeah. I feel kind of bad saying this because it just doesn't really sound good.
Well, remember, he's saying, and I'm not.
Yeah. It doesn't sound good because, I'm a pastor and all, but I think the pro wrestling side of me comes out more in this. I didn't feel sorry for him. I mean, the guy's been a politician for 50 years, and one of the most arrogant, bombastic people in politics, and some of the things that he has said, I didn't feel sorry for him. I'm sorry. I think it's a real good case of elder abuse, what they're doing, because the guy obviously is not in any shape to be running the free world, much less trying to get another 4 years. His health is just terrible. His mental state is terrible, and it's going to be interesting to see what takes place.
So where we sit today, as we're recording this, is that there is a not the debate that we're talking about, but there's another debate that's going back and forth about whether or not he's going to be the actual candidate. Mm-hmm. And as we're hearing the news of this day, it sounds like there are a number of high-level Democratic officials and personalities that really are urging him to step out of the race.
Right.
What do you think that, if that happens, what does that look like? I mean, from where you sit today, what's it going to be like?
I haven't gone back and forth, but I am now going back and forth. Is he going to be there? Is he not going to be there? Is he going to be there? All of the campaign money is under Biden-Harris. So if Biden drops out, it has to be Harris in order to get that campaign money. But you have the political pundits on the Democratic side are thinking of having an open convention and running all these different candidates. Kamala Harris is also a black lady, and if they go over her and put in a white candidate, that's not going to go over well.
Yeah, we've not, in recent history, we've not seen a convention.
No, not since '68.
That would open up where for them to actually have candidates vying for that job at a convention. I mean, so that's a bit of history that could be unfolding.
Right.
It will be wildly intriguing and wildly interesting. And so this question is one, this is just speculation, okay? So let's just play what if for a minute. Let's say that he decides he is going to withdraw as a candidate.
Right.
And chooses now not to run. Mm-hmm. It puts a lot of delegates back in play, but it's got to be his choice. Mm-hmm. So he has to choose not to. So let's say he does not. So then, is there a movement among the Democratic Party to invoke the 25th Amendment and basically say, look, not only do you need to step back, but you need to be done now? Because if that were the case, then we actually have a president, Kamala Harris, prior to the election. Mm-hmm. And then I can't even imagine a scenario where she was not the candidate and she could be the president prior to that. I mean, she could sneak a presidency in, is what I'm asking. Do you think, is that a possibility? I think it is. I
quit watching the news after the last election back in 2020. I just got disgusted with Fox and got disgusted with the news, and so I just quit watching it. Now my wife told me the other day, she said, you're becoming a political junkie now, because every morning I got to watch the news to see what's going on. But I heard exactly that thing this morning, Jeff, on the news, these, quote unquote experts that they have on their shows. And that very thing was brought up about the 25th, invoking the 25th Amendment. So if he's not mentally well enough to run for president, then he's not mentally well enough to continue on as president. And so they were thinking that was a good possibility of using the 25th Amendment. Has that ever been used before?
That's a great question. I don't know. I guess I'm not good enough in history to know that.
I can't even remember a time.
I can't remember a time for a president to happen.
No. So.
But and I hate that we end up in this position politically, because again, I think it weakens the United States on the world stage across the board.
Definitely.
And I think that for us as Christians, for us as followers, I think we have a need and we have a desire to be strong, and to hold that position in the world as a nation built on those Judeo-Christian principles that allow us to be a world leader.
Right.
And so there is a lot of chaos right now on the Democratic side.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting how it plays out.
And you're right, and so we'll keep watching that. But on the other end of it, there's some chaos and some other things have been happening on the other side of the aisle as well. And so we're going to come back and talk about that right after this. So don't go anywhere. Hi, Jeff Dixon. You might recognize me from The Clash, but that's not what I want to talk to you about. I want to invite you to visit a website. It's touchandchange.net. touchandchange.net. That is the website for the ministry of the church at 434, where I am the pastor. Chris Whaley is one of our pastors on staff. And so while you're familiar with us, you may not be familiar with some of the resources that we have to offer that we think will help you in your journey of faith. And you can find all sorts of stuff there with brand new programming that's released every night at 7 o'clock. And you can join us for worship live each and every Sunday morning at 9 or 11:15. Or you can watch streaming reruns of those worship services. And you can go back all the way back to when I had dark hair. And so we would love for you to come and join us and be a part of the journey of faith with us at the Church at 434 at touchandchange.net. Hi, welcome back. This is our second segment of what is an episode on political chaos. We spent the first segment talking about some of the things that are going on the Democratic side of the election cycle. On the Republican side of the election cycle, we saw a bit of history unfold not too long ago, where Donald Trump is speaking at a rally in Pennsylvania, and an assassination attempt takes place. And on that Saturday evening, things kind of shifted a little bit. When we started the segment, we obviously, in the church world, next Sunday morning, you talk to world events and you speak to things that are happening in news cycles. This certainly is a biggie, and it's history in the making. So I want to begin this segment by kind of going over what I said on Sunday morning as we started worship at the Church at 434 in Winter Springs. Right. And I made the statement that we live in a world where good and evil is always at war. And we watched that on display when someone attempted to assassinate Donald Trump. Right. Because there is an evilness that, is just blatant when you try to take the life of someone else. And we watched it as a live event. People all over the world saw this in real time. It was happening. And I was talking about politics, and I said, we elect politicians based on rhetoric. And I don't care about rhetoric. I care about reality. We live in a political world where a lot of hyperbole is used. And at the end of the day, the hyperbole doesn't matter. It's the heart that counts. And we care about political parties. But at the end of the day, we care about people. And so now, once again, just like we were talking in the first segment where, you got the U.S. president who's having some difficulty functioning. Now you've got a former U.S. president, a candidate now who has been shot in front of the world. And the concern, the terror that's there as this has happened in front of a crowd, but then also as people in the stands behind him have been shot as well. There'll be a loss of life there. It prompted a lot of conversation that I called silly, because it prompted some conversations where people started talking about that we need civility in politics. But the people that were calling for civility, that's silliness, because they're the most uncivil people out there. It's their verbiage that has fired people up to that point. And at the end of the day, you know what? It still comes down to a good versus evil moment. Right. And I think what happened there in Pennsylvania that day is that we had a 6mm miracle. Quarter inch. Donald Trump turns his head a quarter inch, and it's an assassination, not an assassination attempt. Right. And what that means for us as Americans, and it doesn't have anything to do with your political party, is that Jesus wants us to have an election. Because America has a role on the world stage, and I really think that involves Israel, and there's a whole lot that we do as a nation that kind of guides the world. And I think that divine providence that day, but Jesus wants us to have an election. In other words, American people, we have an opportunity to make a choice here. Right. and it wasn't going to end that day at a Trump rally in Pennsylvania.
Right.
There's a choice. Now, will we as a nation step up and get it right, or take the opportunity God gives us? We'll have to see. I mean, and all of that is a different conversation. But in a nutshell, though, that's where we're at. And I know that we ended our time praying for our nation, and praying for America, and praying for our leaders, because that is just a brutal moment to watch.
Right.
And it's one of those times where, as you're thinking back on it, you'll probably always remember where you were and some of the images that happened afterwards, and those things that fell after it. Right. I mean, where were you? What were you doing when it happened?
You know, I wanted to watch the rallies. I hadn't seen one of his rallies in a while, and I, saw on my phone he was having a rally that day, and I'm going to watch this because, the political climate is heating up, and just wanted to see, what he had to say, and so waited, because those things never start on time. And so my wife and my two grandkids are in the den, and I'm sitting in the living room, because they don't want to watch politics, they want to watch cartoons, kids do. So I'm sitting there, and finally, Lee Greenwood comes out and singing God Bless the USA, and then Trump comes out and did his usual thing, and he got up to speak, and I've got a soda, and I might have had some chips or something, and watching it, and then all of a sudden you hear those shots, pow, 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 and you see him grab his ear and go down, and I screamed out to my wife. I said, "Oh my God!" I said, "Trump just got shot." And my wife comes running in. What? I said, "Yeah, he got shot, and the Secret Service agents are on him now." And my heart sunk. Oh my goodness! Regardless if you're Democrat or Republican, this is horrible. And then after about a minute, he stood up, and he got blood on his face, and he did the fight, and everybody started chanting USA, and they get him into the armored car, and he goes away. But I was numb, sitting there watching this. But numb but not shocked, because, Jeff, what have we heard over the last few months? I saw a clip where Biden said we need to put a bullseye on Donald Trump. And then I see these clips where they're saying Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. Donald Trump is this and this. And they're just saying horrible things about him. And then the minute, this assassination takes place, of course, we're taping this right after the RNC is just finished. And, for a little bit of civility, they took the ads off of the transportation vehicles there in Milwaukee, and off the billboards. They took their ads off because they were pretty anti-Trump. So now we're in political chaos.
We are.
You have Biden on one side. Is he even going to be there this weekend? And then you have Trump. Can you imagine the next time he does a rally?
And that will be actually this weekend.
This weekend.
When we're taping, yeah. It was a very surreal kind of thing to watch, and a reminder of we live in a world where we actually can see events in real time now in a way that you never could before, and terrifying in a lot of ways, inspiring in some ways. When he gets to his feet, and that iconic now, and it will be an iconic image that will be in the history book for years. He raises his fist with the American flag in the background, with blood on his face. It was certainly a display of strength. I was struck by the fact that panic didn't break out. Yeah. And there wasn't a riot.
That was amazing.
Of people trying to get out and away from a potential, shooting event.
Right.
Was taking place. The people at the rally stayed put. They stayed and they waited to see what was going to happen and see Trump kind of rise and kind of move through it. For him, it turned the complexion of this process for him, I think. I think it's going to change the way that he campaigns. Even the Republican National Convention that took place, the tone was different for him. And a lot of appreciation for the fact that if it weren't for the grace of God and hand of God, he still wouldn't be here.
Right.
And it kind of brings us back to that conversation we were kind of having earlier. I mean, who is going to be the leader of the free world when we're said and done? But I got news for you. There's a whole lot of questions that come out of that rally that are just still weird as we're recording this. I mean, how do you let a sniper on the roof that close to the candidate who is running for president or a former president of the United States?
Yeah. How do you let him take the stage when they had the heads up that there's a person of interest out there? I mean, I wouldn't let him hit the stage until that was taken care of.
And there's people who are in the crowd or people who are watching and that are warning or trying to warn law enforcement as to, there is somebody there with a ladder. They're on the roof. I mean, there's just so many odd things that are associated with that.
Right.
And you have to ask yourself, well, where did the breakdown come? What decision-making process was in place before he took the stage?
Right. Well, there's a guy I listened to his podcast. He's a former Secret Service agent, and I've listened. I wanted to get his take, and of course he had a lot to say on it, and it wasn't good.
No.
It's not the guys that surrounded Donald Trump and put their lives on the line by covering him, but it's like the upper echelon of that. They obviously didn't do a very good job of working with the local police, and I think, there was terrible mistake of not giving him more protection, and there are just so many questions, like you said, so many questions that we have over this, and I don't know if we're going to get them answered this week.
It will be interesting. I mean, I know we're calling this episode the political chaos episode. I mean, I was thinking that maybe one of the titles we could use for it is "Grazed and Unfazed," because he came back firing. I mean, and he's firing on all cylinders. But very much like you, though. I mean, how can you not know that he's Donald Trump and just being Donald Trump and that explosiveness and that reaction that you get from people? I mean, to me, that's kind of a no-brainer. This guy's going to need a lot of protection. It's not like that he's going to, Wally Wallflower that's going to sink into the woodwork. You're not going to hear him or see him or know he's there. He's larger than life anyway.
Well, I've heard people say that are the gun enthusiasts who go to the range and fire, and I've heard various people this week say that, that shot, even by an amateur, was like a 6-inch putt on the golf course, and yet he missed it. So what I'm believing, Jeff, is it was the providence of God. What do you think?
Yeah, I think God had a hand in it. I think we're in a moment where, and I think I mentioned it a minute ago. Jesus wants us to have an election. I mean, I think that free will always comes into play, but I think it's an indicator because again, Jesus doesn't have a political party.
No,
I think while he cares who wins the election, I think he cares just as much about who we vote for when we go into that voting booth. And as a follower, we take him in there with us.
Right.
And so I think that this is a moment where God gives people a chance to decide what kind of move they want to make on that chessboard about the world that they want to live in and what kind of nation we're going to be. And we're making those decisions now. Right. And I think that somewhere out of the chaos, we're settling into what's going to be a long few months getting to that election.
Right.
And so that's kind of our take on what's been going on.
Yep.
I could say it's the news of the day. It's the news of the world. Some of it is history.
All right.
And so you've got to figure out where you land in the midst of that as well. And so our advice to you is pay attention, watch the news,
pray,
look for signs of the times, and make sure that you're making the choices that you think honor God. Right. And so that's going to wrap up this episode. But you do have a piece of advice before we wrap it up, don't you?
Whatever you do, don't tap out.
See you next time.